Hello, everybody, and welcome to Walking Between Shadows. I'm Taryn Elliott, and along with me is my amazing husband,
I'm Ben Elliott.
and we're here to talk about true crime all the time.
So I just want to say, welcome everybody to Walking Between Shadows. And even though we're a true crime channel, we've got something different to offer. And it's been interesting researching this because I didn't know many of these stories. Only one I think I was familiar with.
Yeah.
From Walking Between Shadows, I'm Ben Elliott. I'm your host, and your other host is my beautiful wife.
Hey, everybody, I'm Taryn. You're talking about all these songs we're going to cover.
Yeah, but there's one thing I want to talk to you about before we really get into any of this.
Yeah, what's that?
And I noticed is we get those little blue pills that we put in our toilets to help keep them clean.
Yeah.
And it turns the water blue.
Yeah.
And this is really a conundrum in my head. I can't figure this out. So I flushed the toilet and the water was clear.
Yeah.
After it was blue. So it was blue when I started. It was clear when I finished.
Yeah.
And then I go back and I flush again and shit turns blue again.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Like, how does it get
have
no
no
dye
idea.
in it?
I did the same thing, and I sat there and thought, what the hell? It's
Yeah.
like magic.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Well,
I noticed around the seal of the toilet it's blue. I think Garcia may have.
Well, I've kept checking to see if his mouth's been blue. And of course, Gunny's too short to get up there.
Yeah, right.
So if Gunny gets blue, that means he's been kissing Garcia in the mouth.
Which is, not out of the question
No.
They
They
do.
exhibit gay tendencies.
all day long,
Well,
every day.
It happens. I mean,
Whatever.
no, I don't get it, but that was kind of fucked up.
I was fucked up.
That
I'm
was
like,
real fucked up.
I just kind of sat there like, well,
Yeah, so instead of our usual walking between shadows and talking about true crime and ongoing crime, we're actually talking about tragic stories behind the music.
dark. Some are really dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one, though it may feel dark, it's actually kind of a happy story.
To me and to you,
Yeah.
we'll see what everybody else thinks, but I love the song. So
Yeah. So do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
go ahead and start it up.
Okay, so the first song is going to be probably one that people just, because of the artist, have an immediate turn off to. But then there's those loyal followers.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. This guy's brilliant. He's a brilliant lyricist.
I would be one of those followers.
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
I've always loved
Mhm. From
this
the very
music.
first song I ever heard, I was hooked.
Yeah,
So the first song is "Get Your Gun" by Marilyn Manson.
yeah. And the story behind it.
Yeah.
Ooh, Lord. Now, real quick, let's make sure we warn everybody that this is extremely graphic.
Yep.
There will be
Scenes of crimes being committed,
Right.
scenes of suicide,
and these are the actual
Yep.
crimes and the actual footage.
that's referenced with or in the song.
Right. All right.
So, listeners, use caution. This is graphic, and
yeah, very,
if you're sensitive in any way, close this off.
please. And don't come for us if you
Yeah.
look at it and we warned you and then come back and say you sick fucks.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, we're
hear
just
it.
telling a story, as graphic as it can get. We're just telling a story. And if you're watching on YouTube, same thing. Exercise extreme caution. If you're sensitive to anything that's of a graphic nature,
Oh yeah.
please do not watch this video.
Please do not.
So "Get Your Gun" by Marilyn Manson was released in his debut studio album Portrait of American Family in 1994. You remember that? You remember 1994?
I do. 94. So that would have been should have been my senior year, but I graduated a year early. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
when my graduating class said goodbye to Peabody High School.
Yeah. So this song was inspired by the real life murder of an abortion doctor down in Florida named David Gunn. And he was murdered by an anti-abortion activist. And this event angered Manson. And at first, the first appeal is you think Manson is pro-life,
Right.
but he's not.
No.
He's pro-choice.
Yes, he is.
And he went on to say that, this song also took influence from Manson's lifelong fascination with abortion and an interaction he had with an anti-abortion protester at one time. So it was a personal experience that he had. During the video, Manson was sampling other audio stuff and video stuff too, but there was specifically an audio sample of the televised suicide of R. Bud Dwyer. And he was a politician in Pennsylvania and literally got up in a press conference in 1987 and pulled a gun out and shot himself in front of everybody.
And holy shit, did he not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and the video shows him going all the way to the ground and just basically is he and involved in, several extortion crimes and stuff like that. And he had pled innocent to all of this, but he was still found guilty of being associated with the crime. And even, I think, about 2 years after his suicide, they found out that he, in fact, was innocent. In his statement, he had left a letter to some of the people that worked for him. He had given his organ donor card to his assistant right there before he shot himself. They show him giving him that card. He'd given some more information to another one of his assistants or associates, and he said, "There's something in there for your wife," and hands it to him. And after that, he picks up a big manila envelope that had a gun in it, pulls it out, and everybody starts screaming for him not to do it. And he said, "Stay back, this will hurt somebody," and boom, shot himself in the mouth.
Yes.
But-
and I watched the video, and it just seems so extremely fucked up to me.
Yeah.
To go to the level of making others victims of your. It just shows that a victim becomes a victimizer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when they later found out that he was innocent, he had included in his letter, that he was innocent and today an innocent man dies. So,
Yeah, that's a bit extreme. I mean, just like, I don't know. Me, I would have just said, you know what? I'm done with all this shit. I'm not even going to try anymore. Let it go, and let it work itself out. But that's me.
Yeah, but I think, the reason Manson included that in his video was because it was the ultimate fuck you to people.
Well, yeah.
No matter how you judged them,
Right.
that you're still in control of your fate
Right.
at some point. But sick nonetheless. But back to the reason Get Your Gun was written, was the murder of the OBGYN in Florida, David Gunn. He was shot and killed in 1993 at an anti-abortion protest by Michael Frederick Griffin, a Christian fundamentalist. At his trial, Griffin claimed to have been manipulated into killing Gunn by John Burt, a pro-life leader and former member of the Ku Klux Klan. Gunn's death was, in the words of Slate's Dahlia Lithwick, the first targeted killing of an abortion doctor in America. And Marilyn Manson has been interviewed, or was interviewed over and over and over about this song and the impact of the lyrics of this song. And Manson is reported to have said that the murder almost made him laugh, but it made him mad at the same time. When you think about it, it's so fucking backwards, despite the whole Christian belief of love thy enemy and all that.
Mm-hmm.
When writing the track, Manson also drew inspiration from his longtime fascination with abortion, as well as an elderly man he saw at an anti-abortion protest. Manson remembered, "I had this thing that I bought at a magic shop in Florida that shot cotton wad fire things out of the palm of your hand. And I drove up to him one day and said, 'The devil's got a message for you.' And I shot the fireball at him and ran." And I'm sorry, we have to laugh for that. We have an inside joke about that.
Okay. What did he have? A what?
It was some kind of apparatus that shot these cotton ball fire things
Oh, wow.
out, like from his wrist,
Kind of like Dragon Balls?
kind of like Dragon Balls.
Wow.
Yeah, we know
Okay,
somebody who made a whole self-entertainment, enjoyable, fun experience out of Dragon Balls
Right.
fire.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I mean, so did this guy.
Yeah.
So I guess what Manson was trying to say in the song is, wow, what a fucking way to put things or to show things. I mean, here you are, an abortion doctor, and you are doing your job,
Hmm.
and you've got this pro-life activist that takes the life of someone else. It's just so backwards.
So you think natural law means that a woman has the right to control what happens to her body.
Right.
And we believe that.
Yes.
A woman should have that right.
Absolutely.
We do not accept this overturning of Roe v. Wade
No,
at all.
I am all the way pro-choice. That's
Yeah.
not my business.
Yeah, but essentially what Marilyn Manson's contention was with this was this uber Christian guy that in the Christian faith they're told to love everybody, even their enemy.
Right.
And yet he couldn't. He killed his enemy.
Mm-hmm. An extremist.
Yeah, an extremist. Marilyn Manson really wrote that song about the satire that he thought of as a result of the murder, but his statement was the hypocrisy of Christianity
Right.
and the hypocrisy of law trying to say what we can and can't do,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to something that's dealing with a woman in her body.
Yeah, it's so personal. It's so everyone has their own experiences,
Yeah.
and it is not for us to make any judgments on other people for the choices they decide to make. But it is our responsibility to make sure that these women get some kind of health care and treatment. And that's what's going to end up a pretty bad situation, it seems.
Right. Well, and that's the simple, straightforward tale of Get Your Gun.
Yeah.
But it takes on a whole nother dynamic in essentially the late 90s. When this song had already been out for 5 years.
Well, I know that when we covered the Natasha Cornett story, the Lilly family out of Tennessee that were killed by the 6 kids.
Right.
They referred to Marilyn Manson wanting someone in that group. After killing, this family referred to wanting to hear some of Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and when did that happen? When did the
That-
events with the Lilliards happen?
That was that 94 or 97? That was 97.
Yeah, so the song had already been out for a few years
Mhm.
at that point. So this song continued to have influence for many years.
Right.
And the event I'm referring to is the April 20th, 1999 school shootings at Columbine High School.
Oh, yeah.
In America, the far right blamed the Columbine High School massacre on Get Your Gun. Manson responded to this claim by saying that in my work, I examine the America we live in, and I've always tried to show people that the devil we blame our atrocities on is really just each one of us. Due to its association with the Columbine massacre, Daisy Jones of Dazed placed Get Your Gun on her list of the most controversial songs of all time, though she deemed the association absurd. Jones wrote that the song created an amount of controversy comparable to that sparked by Fuck the Police in 1998 by NWA.
I remember that one.
Yeah. Blurred Lines in 2013 by Robin Thicke.
Remember that one too. What,
Yeah.
what is that?
I don't know. If it's controversial, I guess we need to do another one of these and look into the pop controversy.
Right.
Similarly, a PRS for Music survey conducted in 2010 revealed that the British public considered Get Your Gun the 8th most controversial song of all time, while Schaefer of Stereogum noted in 2015 that it was still one of the most controversial songs in Manson's repertoire.
Wow.
So essentially,
And it is. I mean, I guess it could be.
yeah,
But if you're picking it up from the meaning of him, he's just putting it in words that are very, well, help me out here.
well, I think he tries to put out a pretty straightforward message, about the hypocrisy of life,
Of life.
and our society,
Right.
and he's going to be counterculture to everything that the mainstream media sees as right. I wouldn't say that he's against the right or the left either way. He tends to lean more liberal, but I
He
also
kinda
think
walks yeah, he kinda
he
walks
loves his
between.
country and supports that we should do what we should do to defend ourselves and
Right.
keep our society safe. And this is part of it is getting into things that happen internally,
Yeah,
like these high school shootings.
and put it out there and try to understand the reasoning for
Yeah.
this. I mean, and
Yeah.
he does make it quite clear.
Yeah. I think anybody who feels incensed or turned off by Marilyn Manson should take the time to learn about him.
Yeah, I do too. I
Yeah.
mean, because there's so many people that think he's this devil worshiping sociopath, and
Right.
really he is not at all. He's very intelligent,
Yeah.
and he is just about putting out things that are important to him
Yeah. He
and
wants culture
and
in
important
front
to
and
other
center.
people,
Yeah.
right? For humanity's sake.
I mean, "Get Your Gun" is a great song, first studio album that Marilyn Manson recorded, and "Get Your Gun" will be an alt rock or heavy metal classic for forever.
Forever.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
song. So again, I just want to lead into talking about the Columbine High School massacre because that happened 23 years ago.
Yes.
It'll be 24 soon.
That was 99, right?
Yeah, it was
420?
April. Yep, 4/20/99.
Yeah. So I went there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to Columbine
That's right, you did. You told me about this
last year.
before. Mhm.
Last year. And let me say that it is eerie
Mhm.
because if you're in Colorado, most areas around Denver are mostly like desert.
Mhm.
There's not much as far as trees and flowers and things like that. As soon as I stepped out of the car at Columbine, all I could smell was roses.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you or anybody else notices this, but roses that come to you from your husband or your boyfriend at the office on a Friday
Mhm.
smell different than the ones that are in a funeral home.
Yeah, associated with death.
Yes.
Yeah.
And immediately, that's the feel I got at that
Yeah.
school. Of course, it's not functioning anymore,
Yeah.
but everything is still there as it was.
So that place isn't torn down, it's still standing.
It's still there, and that we'll put
And
some
it was
pictures.
a big complex.
Right, and you can go up behind the school. They have like a memorial up there
Mhm.
with some fountains and some
And it opened in
plaques.
'07.
Right,
Yeah.
and it is quiet and eerie, and you can almost feel the terror that these kids must have felt that day.
Yeah. You start assimilating the scene with what you know about the story.
Right. Yes, very much so.
So, and this is a massive story. I mean, this is one of the first massacres that, was caught on tape and audio, and the investigation really turned into a timeline of these kids that were responsible and the kids that were victims. So the great investigative work that was done there um, has turned out the story of everybody involved
And the song.
and the song.
And the song that we're
Yeah.
going to speak of.
Yeah, yeah. So the Columbine Massacre happened on April 20th, 1999. It was a school shooting and attempted bombing that occurred at Columbine High School in Columbine, Colorado. The perpetrators, 12th grade students Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, murdered 12 students and one teacher. Harris and Klebold subsequently committed suicide after they kind of got to the end of their reign of terror that morning, or it was at noon. It was
I
at
remember.
lunchtime.
I remember watching this.
A further 21 people had been injured by, gunfire and other things that had happened. But essentially, what they'd done is they waited till everybody started going to lunch
Mhm.
in the lunchroom. Now, this school had approximately 2,000 students in it. We're used to a school with 300 or less.
Right.
And they ate in multiple shifts throughout the day of about 500 kids at a time.
hmm
And so at the time, I think there was about 430, 440 kids in the cafeteria when this happened. And just above the cafeteria on the second level was the library, the
Mhm.
main library. So Harrison and Klebold had intended the attack to primarily be a bombing and secondarily a shooting. When most of the bombs that they had failed to detonate, it just turned into a walk and shoot. That morning, it was a nice day. Everybody was just kind of, relaxed, and
Yeah.
it, it wa-
Colorado afternoon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so nobody expected anything. So I'm going to talk specifically about the two boys for a second, give some background about them. Eric David Harris, was born in Wichita, Kansas. The Harris family relocated often as Harris's father was a U.S. Air Force transport pilot. His mother was a homemaker. The family moved from Plattsburgh, New York to Littleton, Colorado in July of 1993 when his father retired from military service. The Harris family lived in rented accommodations for the first 3 years that they lived in the Littleton area. During this time, he attended Penn Carl Middle School, and Harris met Klebold. In 1996, the Harris family purchased a house south of Columbine High School. His older brother attended college at the University of Colorado Boulder.
Around that area, the houses are beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
They
this
really
is a
are.
beautiful part of Colorado, no
It
doubt.
is.
And then Dylan Klebold. Dylan Bennett Klebold was born in Lakewood, Colorado. His parents were pacifists and attended a Lutheran church with their children. Both Dylan and his older brother Byron attended confirmation classes in accordance with the Lutheran tradition. As had been the case with his older brother, Klebold was named after a renowned poet, in his case, the playwright Dylan Thomas. At the family home, the Klebolds also observed some rituals in keeping with the Klebold's maternal grandfather's Jewish heritage. Klebold attended Normandy Elementary in Littleton, Colorado for the first and second grade before transferring to Governor's Ranch Elementary and became part of the CHIPS, Challenging High Intellectual Potential Students program.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, and that's one thing I'll say. They were good students.
Really?
They had really good grades, really good test scores.
Were they being picked on at school?
Well,
Because
maybe.
we're talking about the song Pumped Up Kicks, and
Mhm.
that too was written about, kids, during that time, we all wore those Reebok pumps,
Yeah,
expensive shoes,
yeah,
At that time, they were $159 a pair and
or more.
or more, and now they still are. I mean, you can find them like at Journeys and places like
Mhm,
that, but
mhm.
I was always thought that these two boys, Eric and Dylan, were bullied
Mhm.
because they didn't have much money, maybe, and they weren't able to afford the more expensive things. But when looking into this and the weapons that were brought to the school, they had money from
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So actually, a girl was detained and questioned that admitted to buying weapons at a gun show for them.
oh, wow.
Yeah, but
Now,
she
how old
wasn't
was she?
charged with anything. I think at the time she was 21.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What was she doing hanging out with these kids?
I don't know. It doesn't really explain that, and I'm sure that it's out there.
Right.
You can do a little bit deeper dive in it. Um, but one thing these kids were into was, again, they were highly intellectual.
Mhm.
They studied poetry, they studied literature, and actually kept journals. I mean,
Wow.
they wrote in journals and wrote poetry and stuff like that. So, shortly after the court hearing for the van break ins, Dylan Harris reverted his website back to just hosting user created Levels of Doom, which was a role playing game, a fighting game.
Like gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Video
And
game?
they were into that. Yeah.
Okay.
They were also part of the trench coat mafia
Yeah.
of the school.
Would that be the Columbine Trench Coat Mafia?
Yeah, the
Oh,
Columbine chapter of
chapter.
the yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Got it.
And so he began to write his thoughts down in a journal, especially after this break-in that he and Harris were, or he and Klebold were,
Involved with.
yeah. And in that journal, Harris has typed out his plan of attack, which included possibly escaping to a foreign country after the massacre or hijacking an aircraft at Denver International Airport and crashing it in New York City.
Oh.
Yeah. Funny, just 2 years before 9/11.
Yeah, that's very. Wow. I
Yeah.
did not know that.
So the investigation put this out after the fact. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think this was anything that was brought up early on in the investigation, but essentially that's what they figured out.
So these minds all think alike. It seems like this goes back to the Bever brothers who looked up to Eric and Dylan as role models in 2015,
Yeah.
and and killed their family.
Yeah, yeah. And Klebold actually had been keeping a personal journal for a longer period of time. He'd been doing it for a while, and it went back to about March of 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And as early as November of that year, Klebold had mentioned going on a killing spree in his journal. Klebold used his journal to vent about his personal problems as well as what he'd wear and use during the attack.
So, I mean, it's not really telling parents that you need to snoop through your kids' journals, but if your kid,
Hell yes, you do.
I mean, if they're living in your home, I feel like you have kind of that right.
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay.
If they go out on their own after they graduate from high school,
keep a journal
go to college
then.
and keep a journal, that's their business.
But you keeping a journal in my house, you finna tell me what you got
right.
going. I'm gonna look.
You finna show me.
Damn right.
So Harris had also made entries on topics such as his sexuality in his journal, where he described the desire for sex with women, especially his desire of raping and torturing them in his bedroom.
Oh,
Harris also expressed interest in cannibalism and stated that he would like to dismember a woman whom he could have had sex with.
Charming. Very charming.
Yeah.
Dahmerish.
Yeah. All right. So, and then it moves on to explain that Harris and Klebold's schoolwork also foreshadowed the massacre. They both displayed themes of violence in their creative writing projects.
Mm.
In December of '97, Harris wrote a paper on school shootings titled Guns in School and a poem from the perspective of a bullet. Klebold wrote a short story about a man killing students, which worried his teacher so much that she alerted his parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, damn.
Yeah. And there were investigators found on their personal computer systems and stuff that there were multiple cases of them researching murder and war and weapons and all that fun stuff.
I mean, if they looked on my Google search right now,
well,
you know.
Yeah, but they associate that with what we do too.
Right. Okay.
So,
yeah, it'd be kind of.
Yeah, these kids were students.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, they didn't make a living out of researching gnarly shit.
Right.
So nearly a year before the massacre, Klebold wrote a message in Harris's '98 yearbook, quote, "Killing enemies, blowing up stuff, killing cops. My wrath for January's incident will be godlike. Not to mention our revenge in the Commons." Now, the Commons was
like the
slang for the school cafeteria.
Yeah, like we had the Commons area that we'd all gather.
Which was out in front of our cafeteria.
Right, and hang out and have break and talk shit and everything we did.
Fight.
Yeah, I always liked when somebody screamed, fight! And everybody,
And I especially loved it when Bunny Duncan was involved.
So ass whooping going down.
Oh, hell yeah, some hair pulling. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like all the girls fought in school and all the guys would go to the tennis courts or the field.
We had to make it dramatic. I mean, we had to put on a show.
Yeah.
Y'all did not, maybe y'all didn't want to do that as much, but us as females, I'm not one that got in fights at school, but I enjoyed watching them.
Yeah. Yeah, you were definitely egging it on, probably.
Oh, of course, not me.
So I got to tell you, the investigation found, back to Columbine, the investigation found that Harris had left a microcassette with just the word Nixon on it at his home.
Okay.
And it was on the kitchen table, and on it, Harris said, "It is less than 9 hours now," placing the recording at sometime around 2:30 a.m. the day before or the day of. He went on to say, "People will die because of me, and it will be a day that will be remembered forever."
So they did this to be famous.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
this is the inspiration that those two boys, the brothers,
the Bever brothers,
took.
in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't just the inspiration of the act of these guys, but I think this information being out there, the backstory.
Yeah.
And their, I guess, intellectual dive into planning this and what they were doing.
Well, they were very intelligent people, but that can be very scary too if
Yeah.
it's used
Yeah,
criminally.
but the Bever brothers were not.
No, but they
No.
wanted to be.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And took inspiration. So, weaponry. I mean, these guys walked into this school with an arsenal.
Yeah.
In the months prior to the attacks, Harris and Klebold acquired 2 9mm firearms and 2 12-gauge shotguns. Harris had a High Point 995 carbine with 13 10-round magazines and a Savage Springfield 67H pump-action shotgun.
Good God.
Yeah. Klebold used a 9mm Intratec Tech-9 semi-automatic handgun with one 52, one 32, and one 28-round magazine and a Stevens 311D double-barrel shotgun. Harris's shotgun was sawed off to around 26 inches, and Klebold shortened his shotgun's length to 23 inches, a felony under the National Firearms Act. On November 22, 1998, their friend Robin Anderson purchased the carbine rifle and the 2 shotguns for the pair at a Tanner gun show, as they were too young to legally purchase the guns themselves. After the attack, she told investigators that she had believed the pair wanted weapons to target shoot and denied that she had any prior knowledge of their plans. Anderson was not charged. So in addition to all these weapons, they had multiple explosives. They had made improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, pipe bombs, and they would stuff these pipe bombs with bearings and trash that when it exploded, it just shredded everything that it would touch. Unfortunately, they were not very good at how to make igniters and switches for them.
Or fortunately, they weren't very good at it.
Well, yeah, fortunately, there you go. But most all of their explosive devices didn't go off. They even made gas bombs, and they were made out of propane. They had filled, or both car bombs that were made from 2 20-pound propane tanks, pipe bombs, and various containers filled with gasoline were spread throughout the vehicles. 8 pipe bombs were placed in Klebold's car and 1 in Harrison's. So they weren't only trying to kill people in the scene, in the school,
around the
but
scene.
as they ran away.
Yeah.
Or, there was mention that they did this so that when the paramedics and fire department arrived, they'd get some of them too.
So this whole time, their parents had no idea that they're like hanging out in the garage or up in the room making pipe bombs and...
No mention of it.
Wow.
No mention of it.
Wow.
Now, I'm sure in the trial they did. And again, this is a huge, huge story. We could talk about it for hours.
Right. And I do remember afterwards the backlash that I believe it was Eric's mother. I think she was on Oprah or something. Oprah or Montel or one of them.
Yeah, and she was more or less protested off that show.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, being her would have been very difficult.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, I'm looking at it from her view as a mother, but not knowing something is going on with your teenage son. I mean, something being making pipe bombs and having an arsenal and getting ready to do what they did.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah. According to the shooters' respective journals and videotapes, it's believed by investigators that the pair intended to detonate their propane bombs in the cafeteria at the busiest lunch hour, killing hundreds of students. After this, they would shoot and stab survivors as well as lob bombs. Bombs in their cars in the parking lot would also eventually detonate, killing more students as well as possibly any police officers, paramedics, firemen, or reporters who had come to the school. However, this failed to occur since the bombs in the cafeteria and cars failed to detonate. Now, some statistics about what they did while they were in the school. And to me, having been in the military and in an MOS that dealt with firearms constantly, this kind of blows my mind.
Okay.
So a total of 188 rounds of ammunition were fired by the perpetrators during the massacre. Firing nearly twice as much as Klebold, Harris fired his carbine rifle a total of 96 times, 47 shots outside, 36 shots inside, and 13 shots in the library. Harris also discharged his shotgun 25 times, 2020, 1 in the library, and 4 times inside the school. Klebold fired the Tech-9 handgun 55 times, 3 shots outside, 31 shots inside, and 21 shots in the library. Klebold also fired 12 rounds from his double-barreled shotgun, twice outside, 4 times inside, and 6 times in the library. Law enforcement officers fired 141 rounds during exchanges of gunfire with the shooters. So there were times when they were moving through the school.
You could see them on
Yeah,
like the motion detectors at the school, right?
but
Or
not only
cameras.
that, the cops could see them through the windows.
God.
And there were times that they exchanged fire with police through the windows, either in the library or the cafeteria. And in the hallways, they exchanged some fire with some officers only briefly there, but they had shot at the principal and other students. I mean, the first students they killed were actually outside, on
Right.
steps outside. And there were kids killed in the hallway by the cafeteria and library as
Wow.
well. When they came in, they had 2 backpacks filled with pipe bombs, aerosol canisters, and small propane bombs that were also placed in a field about 3 miles south of CHS and 2 miles south of the fire station. So that was actually detonated prior to the school event.
Oh, I did not know this.
Yeah.
So they had put bombs at other locations.
To set up a diversion.
Wow, hadn't
Yeah.
know it. So they really planned this out.
Right, right. So the bombs in those other sites were intended as a diversion to draw firefighters and emergency personnel away from the school. Only the pipe bombs and one of the aerosol canisters detonated, causing a very small fire, which was quickly extinguished by fire department. It went off after first having been moved. Bomb technicians immediately examined the bombs and relayed to police at the school the possibility of devices with motion activators.
See,
Harris and Klebold changed clothes and returned separately to CHS after planting all of that stuff off-site. Harris parked his vehicle in the junior student parking lot, and Klebold parked in the adjoining senior student parking lot. This parking lot was outside of,
Yeah,
of Columbine.
right.
There was one parking lot that was designated for junior drivers,
I gotcha.
and one designated for
seniors.
senior
Yep.
drivers. So they did everything by class.
Gotcha. I was thinking junior high. Okay, never
No,
mind.
no, no. It was all at the same place.
Gotcha now, because there was 2 parking lots, and I remember the 2 parking lots
Yeah.
there. And there was one. It seemed like one on one side of the school, and one towards the back on the other side of the school.
Well, these adjoined. So,
They did,
yeah.
in kind of like a horseshoe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The school cafeteria was their primary bomb target. The cafeteria had a long outside window wall, ground level doors, and was just north of the senior parking lot. The library was located above the cafeteria in the second story of the window wall. Each car contained bombs.
So I have a picture of the side of Columbine where the kid in the library was trying to get out of through the window.
Yeah.
You know, he'd come out through the second window, and there's footage of that.
Yep.
Where his foot is almost off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Harris pulled into the parking lot, he encountered classmate Brooks Brown, with whom he had recently patched up a long-standing series of disputes. According to Brown, who was smoking a cigarette at the time, he was surprised to see Harris, whom he earlier noted had been absent from a class test. Harris, a good student, was unlikely to miss school days with important academic obligations. Brown berated Harris for missing the test. Harris, acting unconcerned, replied, "It doesn't matter anymore." Harris went on to say, "Brooks, I like you now. Get out of here, go home."
Oh.
Brown, feeling uneasy, had already prepared to skip his next class and walked away down South Pierce Street.
Oh, he saved his own life there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just having that feeling of maybe I do need to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the timeline, these guys are walking up, and I mean, it was about 11:19 when everything started, and they were walking up to the cafeteria entrance, and I think it was the west entrance, or near the west entrance of the school, and they encountered 17-year-old Rachel Scott and her friend Richard Estaldo, and they were having lunch sitting outside on the grass next to the entrance of the school. Klebold threw a pipe bomb towards the parking lot, and the bomb only partially detonated, causing it to give off smoke. Castaldo thought it was no more than a crude senior prank. Likewise, several students during the incident first thought that they were watching a prank occur.
Yeah.
A witness reported hearing "go, go" before Klebold and Harris pulled their guns from beneath their trench coats and began shooting. Scott was killed instantly when she was hit 4 times with rounds fired from Harris's carbine. One shot was to the left temple.
Mm.
Castaldo was shot 8 times in the chest, arm, and abdomen by both Harris and Klebold. He fell unconscious to the ground and was left paralyzed from the chest down. He survived.
He survived 8
Yes.
shots. Wow.
He survived, and in a special that National Geographic put out, and we need to watch this. It's kind of, it has a title like The Final Word or something like that. They go through and dissect this whole thing over a 2-hour episode.
You might link that in the comments.
Yeah.
To this.
And they actually interview him. They interview Castaldo quite a bit because he was among the first 2 that were shot.
Jeez, can you imagine what
Yeah.
he's had to go through physically and mentally?
Oh, no, I couldn't imagine. I mean, it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
So at 11:22, now remember, this all really kind of started at 11:19, and we only got 3 minutes later.
We're 3 minutes in.
Yeah, police respond, and they start shooting at the west entrance, right where those kids were sitting.
So the
outside.
cops were there within 3 minutes.
Yeah. A custodian called Deputy Neil Gardner, the assigned resource officer at Columbine, on the school radio requesting assistance in the senior parking lot. The only paved route took him around the school to the east and south on Pierce Street, where at 11:23 he heard on his police radio that a female was down and assumed she had been struck by a car. While exiting his patrol car in the senior lot at 11:24, he heard another call on the school radio. "Neil, there's a shooter in the school."
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And by this time, there were already people calling 911 out.
Oh, yeah.
And they were calling just to say that somebody was shooting.
They probably had no idea what was going on at that
Right.
point. I mean, but that was quick acting.
Yeah,
on,
I mean,
on these
just within a
people's-
couple of minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at 11:29 is when they reached the library.
And that was the damage. That was a lot of damage, right?
Yeah, this was the worst part of it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And so at 11:29, Harris and Klebold entered the library. 52 students and 2 teachers and 2 librarians were inside. Harris yelled at everyone to get up loud enough to be heard on the 911 call. When no one complied, Harris yelled, "Fine, I'll start shooting anyway." Harris fired his shotgun twice at a desk. Student Evan Todd had been standing near a pillar when the shooters entered the library and had just taken cover behind a copier. Todd was hit by wood splinters in the eye and lower back, but was not seriously injured. He then hid behind the administrative counter.
Mm.
From there, again, this is a very long story. They just continued to walk deeper and deeper into the library. And throughout the massacre in the library, they ordered everybody to get up and said how long they had been waiting for this and seemed to be enjoying themselves, shouting things like "woo" after shooting.
You know, I remember seeing them in the library on video, and it's creepy.
Yeah.
It's scary as
Yeah.
shit. You're in like a fishbowl.
Yeah.
You know, you can't move. You don't want to bring any attention to yourself, but then again, you want to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. While ordering the jocks to stand up, one of the 2 said, "Anybody with a white hat or a sports emblem on it is dead."
Oh, God.
Wearing a white baseball cap at Columbine was a tradition among sports team members, and nobody stood up, and several students tried to hide their white hats.
Oh. They were just like mad at the jocks, I guess. Maybe the popular people or the.
Popular, yeah.
Well, geez.
It's pretty savage how these guys went through this library, and when they got to people that maybe they'd missed just in their broad shooting when they first entered, they would shoot them. And 2, I know that survived being shot, played dead. One rubbed blood on their face so that they would be mistaken for dead.
Mm.
And when Dylan Harris stepped over this particular person, this person recalled hearing Dylan say, "Sorry, dude," as he stepped over him.
So he knew who he was. And
Oh, yeah. Yep.
oh, God, that is so horrifying.
Yeah. So, and to put a stake in this thing with these guys, I mean, and they'd planned this.
Yeah.
They
It's
went
apparent.
through they went through this whole massacre, this whole thing, and committed suicide. When they ran out of ammo or got down to a low amount of ammo, they actually had timed it,
Hmm.
and it sounds like they stood. Some of the people that were in the room when they did this heard them do a countdown, and then a big boom. And they committed suicide.
And how many minutes was that in? How long were they in there actively shooting and terrifying?
So the library massacre ended at 11:36,
Okay.
and 12:08 is when they committed suicide.
So you're looking about an hour, not
Mhm.
quite, of
Yeah,
just terror.
yeah, 50 minutes
And
was about the extent of
in 99, I was working at the pharmacy here. I remember going home at lunch or that afternoon and watching this on TV and thinking, my God,
it.
this is horrible.
Hmm. Well, the media fallout really kind of dealt with the motives, and it says the shooting was planned as a terrorist attack that would cause the most deaths in U.S. history, but the motive has never been ascertained with any degree of certainty. In a letter provided with the May 15th report on the Columbine attack, Sheriff John Stone and Under Sheriff John A. Dunaway wrote that they cannot answer the most fundamental question of why. In the days following the event, media speculation regarding the killer's motive was rife. Media reports were disseminated suggesting various motives of the killers, although all theories were largely unsubstantiated and turned out to be myths. These reports included blaming, bullying, goth culture, video games, Marilyn Manson, and targeting jocks and minorities. Other rumors were spread in the local area but not largely disseminated by the media, such as the false claim spread by some students that the killers were bullied because they were homosexual.
But
And
they weren't.
They were not.
They
They
were
fantasized about
killing and raping women.
Yeah.
Sick bastards.
Yeah.
And you really can't figure out people like that. I mean, there's no figuring out. They're just sociopaths. I mean, it's not in our vocabulary to understand people
Mm-hmm.
that insane.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find it common that kids that have these sociopathic tendencies and all the stuff that we look at, they manifest bullying. They
Hmm.
manifest, what they perceive to be unequal treatment and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And there's no evidence that any of that's ever going on.
We grew up in the 90s. I mean, we know kids can be mean.
Mm-hmm.
We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But we get through it.
Yeah.
I mean, the 80s and the 90s was brutal. I mean, I didn't give a shit if you're being bullied. What do you mean? Quit telling.
Yeah, why are you
Tattletale.
telling on them, tattletale?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me go over here and physically assault you for telling on somebody. So it was just
No.
different. I mean, it was just a different time.
Well, and one thing that I notice is race. I never recall us having issues with race.
No.
And we were black or white, and that's
Mhm.
just the way it was, and we were all friends. I don't know. I just don't find that there was as much pressure about bullying and racism and sexism and all that stuff back
No.
in the day.
I mean, and you're looking at in Colorado too, which is a different area. To say they're gay, I mean, when they weren't. I mean, it looks to me like these people, these therapists and doctors were just trying to find a reason,
Yeah.
just to put a reason and an answer on why these two boys were so twisted, when it's really as simple as they were sociopaths. Maybe it wasn't their parents' fault. Probably not. I mean, it was probably they were born crazy.
Yeah. Well, and here's another sensitive issue
Mhm.
that we deal with more. Opponents of the contemporary psychiatry, like Peter Breggin, claim that the psychiatric medicine prescribed to Harris may have exacerbated his aggressiveness. Harris had complained of depression, anger, and suicidal thoughts, for which he was prescribed antidepressants. Toxicology reports confirmed that Harris had Luvox in his bloodstream at the time of the shootings, whereas Klebold had no medications in his system. Harris continued his scheduled meetings with his psychologist until a few months before the massacre.
He was able to even talk himself out of looking insane in front of people. They were smart. They were master manipulators. So
Yep.
they were able to do these things. And I really just don't find a reason behind any of it except they were narcissistic sociopaths.
Yeah,
And that's pretty much that on that.
yeah. So, I mean, that's just a very, brief look at the Columbine High School massacre
Mm,
in 1999.
yeah.
And
Sad day for many students and teachers and families.
right. Well, and much like the music we're talking about, this event has had cultural implications for years.
Oh, yeah.
And with certain groups, they are seen as heroes. And I feel like that's a very small cross section of society, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like that's spread.
Yeah.
I feel like their influence, just because of pulling this off, has definitely widened to audiences
Mm-hmm.
that take to heart what they did. And then there's also inspiration for music as a result of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
you had
true.
you had a song you wanted to cover about that.
About this one, the Columbine, or Pumped Up Kicks
Pumped Up.
by Foster the People. It's an upbeat song, but if you listen to the lyrics and you read the lyrics, it talks about a kid. They say Robert,
Mm-hmm.
which Robert was not one of these boys.
Right.
But I think they just used a name in general, and he grabs his dad's gun,
Yeah.
and all the kids that are wearing pumped up kicks are gonna they better run. So it's kind of saying anyone that was popular, that was had money, you
But
were a
not only
target.
run, you better run faster than my bullet.
That's right. But yeah, I love the song.
Yeah, it's a great
catchy.
beat. Yeah.
It's catchy,
Yeah.
but behind it's pretty dark.
I got to be honest, until yesterday or day before,
Yeah.
I had listened to that song hundreds of times and not ever once thought it had anything to do with Columbine High
Yeah.
School.
Yeah.
So why? What's the influence there?
I think it's more of the bullying. I think that's more of the influence of the song. See, Eric and Dylan were not so much bullied. Now
Right.
that we read through this and research what went on,
Mm-hmm.
but in general, I think this is what they mean. You can push a kid to a point of no return,
Yeah.
whether it be suicide or homicide.
Yeah.
People react differently, and we should be kind. I mean, we should all be kind, whether we wear the most expensive shoes or if we go to Payless.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. It's about what's inside someone.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're kind to everyone and just, maybe it'll prevent some of these things that are happening. But like I said, I think these two were just deranged.
But I think it's made people feel okay with being so judgmental. Like,
Yeah.
the attack on the nightclub in Orlando
Yeah.
because everybody there was gay.
Yeah. I mean,
know?
that's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And I see, there are so many social platforms now, and I see certain people still in 2022, at the end of it, speaking of transgender and homosexuals and race.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're living back in what, 1940, 1950 something?
Mhm.
Shut up.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. There are certain things you don't need to do.
Yeah.
And attacking someone for their sexuality or their race, or their gender,
That just doesn't fit into society.
no,
nowadays.
it just doesn't.
No.
Move on.
Right.
Educate yourself and move on.
Yeah,
please.
you can be what you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone encourages you to be exactly who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it so much easier to decipher,
Mm-hmm.
if I want to be around you or not, or anybody else, I guess,
Right. And then you weigh this against something like, these kids were older and had very clear thoughts and able to deduce right from wrong.
Oh, yeah, they were
But then you
intelligent.
have something like Sandy Hook that occurs, and
That's-
all these little bitty kids who have no idea what any of
Right.
this means.
Right before Christmas.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
before Christmas, and they don't live this.
No,
So where does that come from? Is it inspired by this kind of shit too?
you can say that. Copycat.
Yeah.
Copycat. They got their moment of fame. They're getting it right now.
Yeah.
They're
And-
getting it when the songs are wrote for them.
Yeah. And maybe where they fucked up was it was people who could have defended themselves.
Yeah.
And people who called 911 right away.
Yeah.
Whereas these other people, like at Sandy Hook, oh, they can't defend themselves, so I'll go in there and just
Mhm.
slaughter
Yeah.
as many of them
Which
as I
is
can.
pretty much the way it goes with all predators and prey, it seems.
Well, let's not forget the concert shooting at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas a few years ago.
Yes, that was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was September 2017. It was actually when Tom Petty passed away. I remember this.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, and there was a couple people from Tennessee that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, somebody just wanting to make a statement.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like shit, vote. For
Yeah.
fuck's sake.
Or
It's
just
not
go live
hard.
somewhere in a corner and be alone.
Move.
Move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Pumped Up Kicks.
Yeah.
Inspired by Columbine.
Yeah. In school.
Boy, I really
bullies.
got a creepy feeling listening to that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Try listening to it and driving by the school. So that's what I made my son do with me, last year when we were up there. I
Yeah.
turned the song on
Yeah.
and went to Columbine and got out and walked up with my earbuds in. And it's a totally different experience when you're going walk. You can feel the lyrics. You can put yourself back on April 20th
You're
of 1999.
You're
Yeah,
creepy.
I know, right?
Oh, but that, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
And that's Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People.
After Pumped Up Kicks, so sticking to our theme of tragic music and behind the lyrics, I guess, the next song is,
Jeremy by Pearl Jam
and it was released when?
in 1992, and it was on the album 10.
Oh, yeah, I
And I
remember that.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I remember my dad got it for me for Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember listening to it on my stereo in my bedroom in my CD player. And then I
Mhm.
had one of those, where the headphones, and it was a Walkman, but it was a CD Walkman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I even had the one that had the bounce protection in it where you could exercise and it had a strap. You held the CD player in your
Mhm.
hand when you walked or ran or whatever you were doing.
Yeah.
I had no telling how many miles I ran. Yes, I did run
Yeah.
with one of these things.
I remember you running around town.
Oh, don't start that.
You little choke.
Lord.
Lord. Okay, so yeah, we're going to talk about Jeremy and what inspired Eddie Vedder to write this song.
Okay.
And there was two stories kind of behind Jeremy. And the first one was Eddie Vedder was in school in San Diego back in, I don't know when this would have been. I guess that would have been like 80s.
No, I bet he graduated in the 70s.
Eddie Vedder?
Well,
Well, anyway.
no, it'd been early 80s, yeah.
Okay, so he's in junior high in San Diego, and he has a fellow student by the name of Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie and Brian had some altercations throughout the years at school.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, Brian came into the school and shot up the oceanography room. Yeah. And Eddie was in the hallway and can recall the traumatic, experience
So
that came
did he
with
kill
that.
people or?
I don't think so. I don't know, though. He could have injured a couple people. I don't know.
But as far as you know, he just shot this classroom
He just
up.
shot this classroom up. Another story that inspired Eddie Vedder was a story that took place in Richardson, Texas
Mm-hmm.
in 1991. There was a kid by the name of Jeremy Wade Dale, 15-year-old boy. And Jeremy Wade Dale was a troubled kid. He was born in 1975 to Wanda and Joseph Dale. I'm sorry. And they were divorced when he was 5 years old. So by 1980, they're divorced. Both parents had remarried.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeremy was living with his mother, Wanda, and her new husband, all the way up until 89. And in 89, Joseph, Jeremy's father, gets his second divorce and buys a home in Richardson, Texas. Jeremy moves out of his mother's home and in with his father, and that would have been in March of 1990. And soon after moving in with his dad, he meets a girl by the name of Nancy,
Mm-hmm.
and he starts attending Richardson High School. And he had to switch schools. So
Yeah.
that was, I'm sure that was a little difficult, but, you know, kids do it every day.
Yeah, sure.
So he meets a girl by the name of Nancy in early March of 1990, and by April, she had broke up with him. Don't know why, just know that she broke up with him, and 2 days later, Jeremy tried to commit suicide. And he was admitted into a Dallas mental hospital called Timberlawn. Jeremy would spend some time there. And in July of 1990, he met a girl by the name of Michelle. She was a fellow patient at Timberlawn as well. And Jeremy was able to get some day passes to go see his family and things like that. And one of those days, he drove to his ex-girlfriend Nancy's house and threatened to commit suicide.
So he could leave this facility.
Yeah, he could leave when he'd get passes, and I think that was on behavior. So how was your behavior? If you're doing everything you're supposed to do, going to the programs, day classes and things like that, you could get a day pass maybe on the weekends and go see, your mom, your dad, your
Okay.
siblings and things like that.
So
Well,
this wasn't like a holding facility.
no, it was not a holding facility. I mean, he had tried to commit suicide in April of 90, and, this was the repercussions of this. In October of 1990, he was released from Timberlawn and back into Richardson High School. And soon after, Michelle was readmitted into Timberlawn, and they broke up.
Mhm.
So that little flame from rehab, she was back in the mental institution, and he was back in high school, and they broke up. During those months before Christmas, his locker was searched 3 times. You remember the locker searches at school,
Never saw one happen.
but we heard about them.
Oh yeah.
You remember when the cops would come in and they go through people's lockers at school?
Honestly, I heard about it, but I never saw one happen.
I never saw it either, but I heard about it.
Yeah.
Remember, they would tell us to sit in our classroom. We were getting our locker searched.
Oh,
You remember that?
I do kind of remember that happening once.
It's a scary time, even when
Yeah.
you don't have drugs or anything. I mean, you're like, shh,
Right.
what if somebody put something in my locker?
Right.
Well, Jeremy experienced this 3 times before Christmas of 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And the things they found in his locker during these searches were several cult books,
Mm-hmm.
cult killing books,
Mm-hmm.
bottles of whiteout. Now, I don't know what that.
Like excessive amounts of bottles
yeah,
of
I
whiteout.
wonder if he was sniffing.
Whiteout.
I don't know. I mean, no one ever really explained what the deal was about the whiteout.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of they just kind of put that in a file.
Mhm.
Like, okay, Jeremy's over here in this file, and he's tried to commit suicide. He's been in a mental institution for trying to commit suicide, and now we're finding cult killing books in his locker and tons of whiteout.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so in November of 1990, a fellow student by the name of Ashley reported that Jeremy, to a guidance counselor, that Jeremy had stated he wanted to kill himself.
Mm-hmm.
December 7th of 1990, this was the last day that Jeremy was in the English class before he committed suicide.
Mm.
On December 11th at 1:30 p.m., Jeremy tells fellow student Antoine he is going to murder his 5th period math teacher and then kill himself.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, all right. And later that day, Jeremy stole $47 from the RHS gym cash box.
Mm-hmm.
On December 12th, around 9 a.m., Antoine tells assistant principal about Jeremy's alleged threat against the math teacher
Yeah.
and suicide. And and about the cash box. Later that day, around 4:30 in the afternoon, the assistant principal contacts Richardson police officers about the theft and the cult books, and also a deer leg that was found in Jeremy's locker.
Wait, what?
Yes, a deer's leg that was duct taped on the end.
What is he going to whoop somebody with a deer leg? Now, that's a new level of redneck right there.
I have no idea. I'm not
So
laughing. I mean, this is,
No, but this severed deer leg was in his locker.
yes, it was like it was just kind of torn off a deer, maybe on the way to school.
Some roadkill. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he was going to beat somebody's ass with it. Maybe he was going to eat on it at
Mhm.
lunch. I don't know. So around 9 p.m. on December 12th, Jeremy is arrested for the theft and questioned about the death threat made to his math teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy tells the police that he just made a general statement. You know, he was so mad that he could kill somebody,
Yeah.
you know, and that once it went through each student's mouth and ear, they had made it into something that was not.
Yeah.
December 14th, the principal tells authorities that Jeremy is back in the school and in ISS, and they will be patting him down randomly,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to get him into a program at that time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jeremy had been telling people he'd been wanting to commit suicide and, you know, deer leg and cult killings and
Whiteout.
whiteout. I mean, it's probably what it was, is that damn whiteout.
Yeah.
Well, so, I mean, the authorities and the school and Jeremy's father all seem to be working together,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out a program that would best fit Jeremy and his mental, you know, issues that he was dealing with.
So ultimately, everybody was trying to help.
Right. It seems like the school, the authorities, and the parents were, you know, all aware that there was some issues going on and
Mhm.
trying to find something that would work.
Yep.
In late December after Christmas, about a week after Christmas, Jeremy tells Michelle that he was given a gun.
That he was given a gun?
He was given a gun. Now, I don't know if that was a Christmas gift or he told her that was a Christmas gift. I don't know.
Yeah.
January 3rd of 1991. Jeremy allegedly tells a classmate that he is going to kill the math teacher again the next day. He
Mhm.
did not like this math teacher. I mean, I
Apparently.
hate math myself, but I can't really say that I would want to threaten a teacher over it. But
I know
he
a
would get
teacher
irate.
wanted to threaten you. Jim Donovan.
I had a desk thrown at me for catching somebody's hair on fire, and I apologize for that. You know who you are.
Okay. We'll leave that where it is.
Let's just leave that go. Yeah, so, I mean, he did not like this math teacher, and he told this fellow's classmate on the 3rd of January that he was going to kill this math teacher. I'm like, the next
Mhm.
day. On January 6th, 11 a.m., Michelle calls Jeremy, who seemed depressed at the time, and he was on acid bad.
Mm.
And she tells him that she might be pregnant. And he tells her that he would die for her. Oh, the romance.
Mm-hmm.
After the call, Michelle calls Wanda, Jeremy's mother, and says Jeremy seems weird. You know,
Mhm.
he's sentimental, like,
Overly.
yeah, but Wanda did not seem concerned, you know. She just didn't seem concerned.
Yeah.
On January 7th, 1991, at 3:30 p.m., Jeremy still is in ISS, and he leaves school on the bus for a counseling appointment. His counseling appointment's over around 6 p.m., and he walks to his dad's girlfriend's house. She wasn't there. She was at work. So he pages his dad and says, you know, his dad comes and gets him around 7:30 that evening
Mm-hmm.
from his girlfriend's. At 8:30 p.m. on the 7th of January, he calls his mother, and it was a normal conversation with his mom. You know, there was no red flags, anything like that.
All right.
10 p.m., Jeremy goes to bed. On January the 8th, Dad calls early that morning to make sure that Jeremy is up and ready for school.
Mm-hmm.
Normal conversation. Jeremy's up. He says he's getting ready and he's about to walk out the door. Before school, Jeremy calls Nancy, the ex-girlfriend. He's hung on to Nancy, even though she broke up with him. He's
never let go of her. Yeah.
he ain't done with her.
Right.
And he tells Nancy that him and his dad are moving to Tokyo later that day.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and she thinks this is really strange, and that's a huge move to be doing all of a sudden,
Right.
But Jeremy seemed happy and content, and Nancy was thinking, maybe this will get him off my ass.
Mm-hmm.
He told Nancy that day, he said, I'm mailing you a letter and a ring. And Nancy was like, okay, all right, man. Since you're moving to Tokyo, yeah, okay, thanks, man.
Yeah.
So Jeremy starts, he's acting sentimental to Nancy and to Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
At 8:20, Jeremy pages his dad and says, I'm at school, safe, sound, I got here, So his dad, okay, good, he's at school. 40 minutes later, school calls Joseph, which is his dad, and says, Jeremy never reported to ISS today. Well, what? He said he's at school. Well, Jeremy was in the commons area hanging out with these two girls named Andy and Jennifer. Mm-hmm. They were sitting at a table skipping their first period. And he walks up to the table and tells them that his girlfriend's pregnant, Michelle, and that he's going to move down there with her, and that one of the girls named Andy said, well, where have you been? You haven't been in class, and well, I haven't been in ISS. I have a pregnant girlfriend. She's been sick, and I've been down there taking care of her,
Mm-hmm.
And then before he starts to walk away, he turns around to Andy and he says, I'm going to give you a letter. Will you send it for me? Because I'm going to be gone this afternoon. And she says, sure, and he hands her a letter, and it's not sealed up. It's in an envelope, and it's got an address on it and everything. And then he takes a ring out of his pocket. Mm-hmm. It's a diamond ring, and he says, I wanted you to see this so you would know how important it is to mail this letter. So he puts the ring in the envelope and hands it to her, and sure, I'll mail it. She goes to the bathroom, a little bit after that, and she was going to try to read the letter, but the bell rang, so she had to get to class.
Yeah.
She already skipped the first period. Also, during that time, Jeremy, another student, was in the commons area. And
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy walks up to her and says, here's my cigarette butt. This is mine and something to remember me by. Very weird.
Yeah, it's just out of place. Yeah.
Yeah. So at around 9:40 a.m., Jeremy goes to his English class. And when he walks into the classroom, the teacher asks him if he has an ISS pass to be back in class. So he asks for a hall pass to go get that from the ISS teacher. And he goes to his locker and presumably gets a gun. He goes back to his English class and steps to the front of the classroom, and he looks at his teacher and says, Miss, I think I went and got what I really wanted. And he pulls a gun out, puts it in his mouth, and blows his brains out in front of the students.
Mm. Damn.
Yeah. What in the hell was going on with Jeremy?
Sounds like he was screwed up from the get-go.
Right. Jeremy had some major codependent issues, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad. At the same time, it's manipulative. So the letter that he had given to Andy to give, asked to mail, was to Nancy.
So he went all the way back to the original girl that was involved here.
He put the ring in the letter to Nancy.
And she's not the one that was pregnant, or supposedly pregnant.
Right.
That was Michelle.
That was Michelle from the mental institution.
Yeah.
And so in the letter, he states that this was not her fault, and he wanted to know if she would come to his funeral. Just call the house and let his dad know.
Right.
and that it was Michelle's fault. He writes a letter to Michelle, a suicide letter as well,
Mm-hmm.
telling Michelle this was not her fault. Investigators go to see Michelle at Timberlawn Mental Institution and question her. There they find out that Michelle is not pregnant, nor has she ever even had sex with Jeremy.
Mm.
She claims she only wanted to be friends with him, and she felt sorry for him. The letters that they took from Michelle, all from Jeremy, talked about suicide and how he had so many issues with his family. They also discovered that in those letters that he had gotten the gun that he used to commit suicide from his dad's girlfriends the night before when he was there at the house after walking home or walking from the counseling session. And before his dad picked him up. He also sent a suicide letter to a girl by the name of LaDonda.
Okay, that's the first time you brought that name up.
Right. So this was just another student that he had sent a letter to and a tape. And it was a 90-minute audio tape of him talking about himself. Side A was positive and side B was negative.
Mm-hmm.
She received that the day after he committed suicide. The school called in some grief counselors and things like that because this is traumatic. You think about a student coming in front of your classroom and blowing his brains out.
Yeah.
We talked about this with, we're going to have a video in this.
On the first song?
On the first song that
Yeah.
this is happening in. It's
Yeah.
It's traumatic.
Yep.
And it's not for everyone to see. And high school students, 15, 16 years old, had to have been terrified. Getting back from school after Christmas, break, and then you're just getting back into your schedule, and then this happens.
Yeah.
So they had to call in lots of grief counselors. And Jeremy was a very talented artist. And there'll be some pictures in here that he has done. I mean, that were just amazing.
Yeah.
But the song, Jeremy, kind of talks about a kid that seemed like he was bullied and never spoke. That doesn't portray the story of Jeremy Wade Dale.
Mm-hmm.
He was a brat.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
I'm an asshole when it comes to this kind of stuff, but it seems like he had a very immature behavior and reaction to things.
Right.
It seems like he had a very immature reaction to circumstances in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Some core pain that maybe was codependent or fear of neglect. But also, he seemed like a little womanizer.
Mm-hmm.
He's going around and has sending mixtapes to LaDonda and suicide letters and to Michelle and to Nancy and rings. And
it sounded like even in death he was trying to keep them all kind of huddled up with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually have had an experience with a suicidal boyfriend. Yeah, it sounds weird, don't it?
Huh?
So somebody that we both know, probably first serious relationship this person had ever been in. And when it came time for her to break up with him, he barricaded himself into a room and threatened to commit suicide unless she stayed with him.
Yeah.
They are together to this day.
Wow.
More than 30 years. Yeah.
Wow. I'll have to ask you later who that is. I don't want you to say on here.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, that's
it's an immature.
immature. That's
It's
exactly
immature.
what
I mean,
I was about to say.
I get it. But,
Mhm.
wow, he did traumatize a lot of people,
Yeah.
with those immature reactions.
Yeah.
So that is the story of Jeremy Wade Dale and the song Jeremy from Pearl Jam, album 10.
Right. So, in continuing with our theme on this fun episode of Walking Between Shadows and the tragedy behind some music, we've got perhaps one of your favorites now.
It is. This is Nirvana's Ollie.
Yeah.
And this is a fucked up song to me. I like it,
Yeah.
but I hate it at the same time.
Yeah,
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and again, I'd heard this story before, but not any details to speak of until you were telling me about it. So, yeah.
Okay, so Nirvana's song "Polly" it was the 6-track off their Nevermind album.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it ended with it was the 6-track off their Nevermind album.
Kurt Cobain wrote the song "Polly" from the perspective of the rapist.
Mm-hmm.
But he's speaking of a man by the name of Gerald Friend. Gerald Friend, in 1987, Polly and a friend of hers went to a rock concert in Washington, Tacoma, Washington. And she was 14 years old, and that's, now we'd say that's kind of young, but, at the time, hell, I think I went to some concerts when I was 14 years old with friends. But on the way home, Polly accepted a ride from Gerald Friend, who at the time was around 50 years old, I believe.
Yeah.
He held her at knife point, I believe, from there, and took her to his double wide, or his trailer, and...
It was a mobile home. Like, it was a thing he was driving.
Was it a mobile home?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I didn't know that. It's
Yeah.
even worse.
It was like an RV.
Okay, let's start over on that one then.
Yeah. And he took her and a little boy.
No, that was the first.
Oh, that
was the first one. Okay, so Kurt Cobain wrote the song "Polly" after reading an article about a rapist, a serial rapist in Washington named Gerald Friend. He had read the article about a 14-year-old girl named Polly who was leaving a rock concert in Washington and took a ride with Gerald Friend, who held her at knife point, and took her in his mobile home.
Yeah, like an RV.
Oh.
Yeah.
God. And suspended her with pulleys from the ceiling of the RV.
Ooh.
And would torture her with blowtorches, starving her, treating her as a pet, repetitive raping her. And Polly was a smart girl because Polly was able to manipulate the situation herself at 14 years old against her kidnapper and rapist. She was able to convince Gerald Friend that she was falling in love with him and that his torture was boring her, just as he was bored. It seemed to make it lessen the abuse when she would play the head games with Gerald Friend in return. I mean, she just was acting very unresponsive to the torture, which is completely amazing to me that someone can do that at 14 years old. And she convinced him one day to ride around in this mobile home. And he had to go get gas at a gas station, and Polly was able to escape from the truck and get help. A couple days later, Gerald Friend was apprehended and taken into custody. Here's something about Gerald Friend that disgusts me and why this should have never happened, and probably one of the reasons why Kurt Cobain wrote this song. Gerald Friend was convicted of a similar crime years earlier. I believe that would have been in 1966. Gerald Friend at the time was 22 years old and picked up 2 hitchhikers, a 12-year-old girl and her brother. When he picked this girl up, he immediately turned the brother away, put a gun to him, and made him get out of the vehicle. He ended up driving this 12-year-old little girl to Mount Rainier Park,
Mm-hmm.
where he beat her, raped her, and cut her hair off. She was able to escape by jumping into the river and was spotted by some motorists that were passing by.
Mm-hmm.
Several days later, Friend's father found him hiding in a field near their home. Friend drew a .22 pistol on his father, and during the struggle, Friend was shot and wounded. His father took him to the hospital and then turned him into the police. He was sentenced to 75 years. However, after spending 20 years and escaping twice from prison in Walla Walla, Southern Washington, he was paroled out in 1980. He is also suspected to have murdered 2 women in Tacoma, Washington, too. That has been not solved. This is the case that's still open, but it's suspected that he played a role in these 2 women that came up missing and murdered
Yeah.
in 1987. Polly was abducted in 1987 as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are no pictures of Polly.
And that's not her name.
That is not her name. And a lot of people confuse this song with Polly Klaas,
Mm-hmm.
who was another little girl that was abducted and killed in California, but that was in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
So Kurt Cobain was a huge feminist. We know that he fought really hard for women's rights, equal rights. When he wrote this song, he wanted it to be dark.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted it to make a statement, and I believe it did very much. Coming from the perspective of the rapist, the instruments that he used in this song, he actually went to a pawn shop, Kurt Cobain did, after reading this article, and bought a $30 guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Had to tape down some of the chords to keep it so he could hit the notes. He could barely keep it tuned,
Mm-hmm.
but it worked brilliantly. And he is absolutely one of my favorite vocal artists of all times. I think he is he was an amazing artist.
Yeah.
And this song really portrays, it makes me feel like I'm in the room with this band, Gerald Friend. And it's creepy.
Yeah.
It's creepy. And the things that he did to this little girl, and the things he did to the 12-year-old little girl, and the way the justice system fell the fuck through and dropped the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And how the fuck was this man paroled out of prison? Kidnapping is a federal charge. Federal sentencing is 85%. He did 20 years
Of a 75-year sentence.
of a federal. It would have been a federal sentence, right? I mean, he kidnapped the little girl off the side of the road and took her to a federal state park. I mean, and committed these crimes on her, and escaped 2 times. Yet the parole board still allowed him to walk in 1980.
Yeah, and he was later suspected of being the Green River Killer.
Yes, yes. So we really don't know how sick and demented and how deep and how many crimes this Gerald Friend committed.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this motherfucker is still alive.
I don't know.
I cannot find a death date on him, which would put him at 90-something years old.
Yeah.
So it once again proves, just like with, and maybe we'll bring up one day the J.C. Dugard case where she was abducted from a man that was paroled out from a similar crime of kidnapping and rape.
Mm-hmm.
And he abducted J.C. in Lake Tahoe, California, and had her for 18 years.
Yeah.
She had 2 children with this man.
Yeah.
J.C. Dugard did. Fortunately, I believe Polly was able to escape after a couple weeks of this torture, which does not lighten the fact that she lives a life of hell.
Yeah.
Traumatic experiences I can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm. Definitely PTSD worthy.
There's a line in the song talking about Gerald Friend said it amazed him how instinctual people are,
Mm-hmm.
and Polly definitely proved
Yeah.
that. And Kurt Cobain was able to really, really portray this song in a way that should get people to look
Yep.
and maybe start becoming a lot stricter on rapists and pedophiles and kidnappers and these sick, demented motherfuckers that never, ever, ever get better.
Yeah. Well, and also it hopefully makes a statement to where people are more situational aware when they get into situations like that.
Right.
Or, yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, nowadays we don't see as many people hitchhiking.
No, well,
It's just not a thing.
it's scary. I mean,
Yeah.
you just never know. And then not only, who would be picking them up now? I mean,
Yeah.
somebody that would do something to them, or who's going to be doing it? Somebody that
Yeah.
doesn't care about their life.
Yep.
It's scary. I know a long time ago, there were a lot of hitchhikers, and that was
Yeah.
a thing, but that has passed.
Mm-hmm.
But these stories continue. I
Mhm.
mean, Polly portrays many, many, many males and females that have gone through this similar things.
Yeah. And unsolved crimes. There are
Exactly.
just stacks of unsolved crimes that probably have something to do with kidnapping and rape and all that stuff. Just like that. From an event or hitchhikers. Yeah.
So I encourage everybody to put their earbuds in and dare to be in a room with a rapist while Kurt Cobain sings to you and plays his $30 pawn shop guitar.
So that was Polly by
Yes.
Nirvana from the Nevermind album in 1992. Very good. They got another one?
Yeah, we've got another one. And this one, Fastball, The Way. And I love this song. And I've always loved this song, so I'm excited about this because this song has intrigued me since I remember riding around with Andrea in 1999, going to Paris, the layout at Budweiser Beach,
Mm-hmm.
and this song coming on.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know the meaning then. And I didn't know the meaning until just a couple days ago.
Right.
So
As sad as it is, I actually like the story.
I do too.
Yeah.
The Way by Fastball. And it's a story about an elderly couple out of Toledo, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
by the names of Leela and Raymond Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Leela was 83 years old and Raymond was 88 years old. And they were said to be a very close couple. They didn't do anything without each other,
Right.
right? So on the day of June 29th, this was a Sunday in 1997, the couple decided to go to a day festival in nearby Temple, Texas. One of their sons had begged them not to go by themselves. He would he said, "I will drive y'all," but
We're
Leela said,
good. Yeah.
Leela said, "I know how to get there."
Yeah.
So
And all this knowing that they had already had signs of early onset or dementia.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leela was known to have gone to Walmart once. She would go there and have coffee every day.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time, recently before their disappearance and deaths, she had went in at 10 p.m. at night and was confused why the son was not up.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. Raymond had a stroke earlier in the year and had brain surgery.
Yeah.
So he was dealing with recovering, and both of them were showing signs of dementia.
Yeah.
Needless to say, on Sunday, June 29th of 1997, they decided to go to this festival without their son's permission, without telling their other child that lived next door, their other son. He lived right next door to them.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So they got up before the sun came up, and they took off for their trip to their festival.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're driving, they're driving, and the day goes on, and the kids are worrying to death. Where are our parents? They went. They talked about going to this fair. I hope that they didn't go. They couldn't find them.
Yeah, it was only like 15 miles away.
Right.
And Leela
So
and Howard just kept driving.
yeah, they did. And Leela was the one driving, and Raymond was sitting in the passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids were not aware of how bad the mental, the dementia had started to take hold in this, or take over their parents. They didn't really realize it was as bad as it was.
Mm-hmm.
But they were very worried by Sunday afternoon, and the parents were not, home.
Mm-hmm.
The Howards were spotted at Walmart that afternoon, and after that, no signs of them. Authorities were called, and missing persons bulletin was posted that day. So on Sunday, they put this missing, person bulletin up, and here we go. So a couple days go by, and on Wednesday, July the 3rd, Miss Leila was pulled over for not having any headlights on at night.
Mm-hmm.
And she was telling the police, that she was trying to go home, and she seemed confused, but he still let her go, and she cut her lights back on, and then a little bit later, she was pulled over again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, she had her lights on bright.
Yeah.
So another cop pulls her over, and she apologized, and they said she's just as sweet as she can be. And it's like these shadows. People are seeing them here and there, but they just can't catch them. They've got. And the day goes on, and on Wednesday, on that same day, there was an article put out in the Texas newspaper about that. About these people, and that's when the song started being written. And it's about this couple that's going on this 15-minute drive down the road to this festival, and days and days are going by, and they're being spotted here and there, but they're just not getting caught. It's just like they're right out of reach, And so that to me is.
So where were they spotted? Where were some of the spots they were spotted? Like in Arizona?
They were spotted in Arizona.
Farmers market in Arkansas?
Yes, they were spotted at different places. But they were just Arkansas, Arizona.
So they would have had to gone through New Mexico to get to Arizona.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're spotted everywhere. They're spotted here, there, farmers markets, and on and on, Arizona, Walmart in town.
Mm-hmm.
Pulled over by a couple authorities for light issues. But unfortunately, on July the 12th, bad news came.
Mm-hmm.
The couple's car was spotted at the bottom of a 25-foot cliff just outside of Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So they had traveled.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that's like, just to be going aimlessly and not really?
Well, how did they remember to fill a car up with gas?
Right. They left behind, they had a cat there.
Yeah.
Grandkids. Everybody was worried.
Yeah.
Well, they found Raymond still in the passenger seat, deceased. But Leila went over to the passenger side, opened the passenger door, and then walked out a little further away from the vehicle and passed away.
Mm-hmm. But
So
she had her purse with her and
she
stuff.
was clutching
yeah.
her purse and her keys still.
Yeah, she was still on a mission to go somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's sad for the family.
Yeah.
But to me, 88 and 83 years old, and hey, if you want to do that when we're 88 and 83 years old, I'm down.
Well, we'll be 88 and 86.
Okay. But you know what I'm saying.
Of course. It's a very sweet story. that's honestly, I would love to go out that way.
Yeah. I
with
mean,
you.
they
And,
went out their way. And
and still completely in love. Even in the throes of dementia,
yeah,
it was about that partnership between them. And
they were
had to
going to
be
go
together.
spend that time
Yep.
together
Yep.
and finish this together.
Yep.
And they did. And I think it's a Romeo Juliet kind of story, but it's mysterious and it's eerie and
Mhm.
it's sad for their family. But
Yeah, it definitely makes the song take on a different meaning when you listen to it.
yeah, and I do encourage that everybody does that too.
Yeah.
And listen to the words. This was, like I said, this song was written before the bodies were found. And so it has a very upbeat, kind of positive.
This song came out in '99.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was written while before the bodies were
while they
discovered.
were searching for them.
Hmm. And so they didn't know the ending,
Yeah.
and it leaves it open. And I still think it leaves it open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like they were together. They strapped in the car, and they decided to go to the next dimension together
With each other.
with
right?
each other.
That's all that matters.
Then they found the way.
They found a way. So,
Yep.
The Way is the name of the song by
Fastball.
Fastball. Well, I got to say, this has been interesting because I will say these songs that we've covered, now that I listen to them and understand the story behind them, they take on a whole different meaning,
Yeah.
especially The Way. That's kind of my love song.
I kind of like it myself. Yeah.
Well, I know there's nothing in life I want more than you, so,
Mhm.
and we do this together.
That's right.
Right.
I love.
Thank you, baby.
Thank you.
This has been Walking Between Shadows. Again, I'm your host, Ben Elliott, and my wife, Taryn Elliott. Look for our next episodes coming soon, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button.